I call this regular meeting of the North Adams City Council to order for November 12th, 2024. This meeting is being recorded and can be viewed live on Northern Berkshire Community Television, Channel 1303, and will be posted to their website as soon as possible. We will also be live streaming on YouTube at www.youtube.com/@NorthAdams. Just click on the live tab and then on the 2024 11.12 City Council meeting. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Blackmare? Bona?
Yes.
Breen?
Yes.
Fitch?
Yes.
Morrow? Leskowitz?
Here.
Shade?
Here.
Wilkinson?
Here.
Sapienza?
Here. Okay, we have 7 members present. We have a quorum. Okay, please stand for a moment of silent remembrance. Tonight, we remember Ronald A. Scovera. He was an employee of the city of North Adams. And Virginia Ginny Sheldon. She was a volunteer for the North Adams Public Schools. And the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Approval of the minutes. We do not have minutes for tonight's meeting, so we will move on to our next thing. At this time, I am going to open the public hearing. Council paper number 12,433-1, communication number 72 from Mayor Maxey setting tax classification of local tax levy to be allocated to each class of real estate and personal property for fiscal 2025. I am going to turn it over to the mayor. She has a presentation for us.
Great, thank you, President Sapienza. You would think after all these months I'd get that straight. So I'm here tonight with Assessor Jessica Lincourt, the Board of Assessors, and the financial team to make a recommendation to the City Council to set the tax rate for 2025. Next slide, please. So the goal of this hearing is basically to establish the tax rate. So we make a recommendation to the City Council, and they, with all their knowledge, make a determination. So we use tax levy percentages as well as a residential factor. So all of this is governed by Chapter 40, Section 56 of MGL, and the valuations to start are determined by the city's Board of Assessors and then reviewed and approved by the Department of Local Services, and then those recommendations are put forward to the City Council, and that information is used in setting the tax rate, which is enacted by the City Council. Next slide. So I pretty much touched on this. The assessor determines the value of each property. It's classified by residential, open space, commercial, industrial, or personal. Jessica will get into all those categories and talk about areas that we've had some new growth in. We submit all those values to the DLS. We determine the minimum residential factor for the city, and then we hold this hearing. So this is where we are tonight. Our goal is by the end of tonight is to set the tax rate for the fiscal year 2025 tax season. Next slide, please. So the residential factor establishes how we shift expenses between, or classifications between residential and mostly commercial, industrial, and personal property. We currently have a dual shift between commercial and residential, and we can shift as much as up to 175%. And in the next slide, you'll see what our recommendation is 2 slides from now. So where did we end off? Last year, we voted on a shift of 1.715 with the residential factor that you see up there. Tax rates were $17.14 per thousand for residential and open space, with a commercial, industrial, personal property, which we refer to as we move forward as CIP, of $36.34. So where are we today? Next slide. Our recommendation as presented in the package is to keep the shift the same as last year, 1.715. And because of all of the assessments and values, the residential factor went to 0.8138, making the tax rate itself $16.71 for residential and open space, which is a reduction of 43 cents. And the commercial making it $35.22, which is a reduction of $1.12. Next slide, please. I think I missed a slide. Can you go back to number 6? So at this point, I'm going to turn the program over to Jessica to talk about all of the data behind these numbers and where we are in the cycle with values. Jessica?
Hi, everybody. Here we are again. My job as the assessor is to assess based on full and fair cash value in an open market. Willing buyer, willing seller, arm's length sales. So every year I have to do a sales analysis of everything that comes in. Every month I get deeds from the Registry of Deeds. I have to go through those to see if those are arm's length sales. If they are not, we code them out in my system. An example of a non-arm's length sale is like a foreclosure, just so you know. This slide appears our valuation-based summary from fiscal year 21 to where we are now in fiscal year 2025. As you'll notice, the residential category, which includes single-family homes, multifamily, condos, and such, that's gone up again. The overall residential category is up about 9.1%. That being said, I'm going to give you a little breakdown of everything in the residential category. Single-family homes assessments are going up on average about 9% this year, which is kind of consistent with all of the other towns and cities in Massachusetts right now. Condominiums, so we had a lot of new growth with condominiums this year. The overall category is up 19.4%, but don't fret, if you own a condominium, your assessment's going up about 3.5% this year. We have another category that we call mobile home parks and parcels that have multiple homes on one lot. Those are up about 11% this year. The 2-family, 3-family homes, those are up about 9.2%. 4+ families, those are up about 6.5%. Land, residential land, buildable, non-buildable, potentially buildable, up about 5.6%. Also on this in this slide, you'll notice we have open space. We don't actually have an open space category. That's why there is no data in that. Anything that is classified as open space falls under commercial or residential or industrial. Our commercial category, it's up about 6% this year. So commercial values are up about 6%, some about 5.6, but we'll say 6%. Industrial has dropped this year, went down about 3.8% overall. That really has to do with the value so much, but we actually lost a couple things in the industrial category. We had a piece of land that was industrial that was transferred to the city. That was Hyde Hill, if you guys remember that from back in the springtime. And so that's exempt now. And there was also the NORAD mill. We had that categorized as industrial, but it's commercial now because it's filled with businesses and offices, so we transferred it to that category. Personal property is up about 11%. Most of that is due to new growth, a lot of new assets with businesses. Some of our like utilities like Berkshire Gas, they added about $3.7 million in new growth to that category, why it's up so high. So overall, our total values for this year are $1,093,077,758. Next slide, please, Stacy. So this slide is about our fiscal year 2025 tax-based growth summary. Every year we want new growth because new growth expands our tax base and we can tax more people. And so when we can tax more people, it's less of a burden on the people that are currently here. We want to bring new people in. We want people to bring businesses here so we can expand that base. Residential new growth this year, the value, $5,618,200. That comes out to taxes about $96,296. Primary reasons for the growth in the residential category, Johnson School is now at 100% taxable value. Last year it was at like 75%. So that added about $508,200 in value to that category. Mohawk Forest had significant renovations that added about $1.1 million in value to the category. Graylock Works condos, the residential condos over there, they were at 10% completion last year, and now they're at about 50% completion, so that added about $2.1 million in value. And there was a single-family home, gorgeous home up on Pattison Road. Last year it was about 80% complete, and now it's 100%. So that gave us about $223,200 in value growth. There were also two tourists' house that they own on Mass Ave. They've done significant renovations to those. They were at 80% completion last year, and this year they're at 100%. So that gave us about $275,600 in value. And let's see, we have 3 subdivided parcels. One of our nice residents split up his big piece of land so his kids could each have a piece. So we have 3 new parcels, which added about $110,200 in value. And there was also a significant renovation on Hall Street. I don't know if they pulled a permit, but I saw the pictures online. That added about $80,100 in valuation to that. Everything else had to do with permit inspections, sheds, pools, even though the Massachusetts Department of Revenue says I can't count pools as new growth. I don't know why, but there were some pools. We can add those as yard items. Additions, decks, sheds, all sorts of things. We are also in the middle of our cyclical valuations, which is like every 10 years we have to go through every property in the city. Some people did significant things and didn't pull permits, and we found out. So those 2 big garages on somebody's house, we added those now. So that added to that valuation growth. Once again, open space, we don't have that as a category, so we keep that at 0. Commercial new growth, $2,455,600 in value, which equates to about $89,237 in taxes. Significant things in that category that added to the new growth. We have that new storage facility down on Hodges Crossroad. That was about 90% completion when I went out there, so that added $961,300 in value. We also have the new building at the Porches Hotel. That's about 45% complete. That added $472,200 to our value. There's the new building on Current Highway. Holland & Company owns it. That added $251,700. One of the condos at Graylock Works is actually a commercial condo. They do event spaces in there. We had that at 10% completion. It's at 100% now, so that added $446,300 in value. And what else? There was a commercial building on East Main Street that had significant renovations, so that added $196,600. And in case you didn't know, Burger King is now its own parcel. It was actually owned by the company that owns the L-shaped mall and the building with Planet Fitness, so that was part of that parcel. But there's been some ownership changes, and we got to take that because they were selling it to a separate entity, make that its own parcel. So we got to take the land value, which was about $64,000. Industrial, we didn't have any new growth there this year, I'm sorry to say. Personal property, $6,732,100 in value. That equates to $244,653 in taxes. Big thing this year, I already said, $3.7 million in new assets from Berkshire Gas this year. Spectrum had $1.1 million in new assets, which adds to that value. Verizon New England, $472,600 in new assets. Mass Electric, another utility, $509,850. And Walmart had some new assets, $259,280. And everything else had to do with just smaller businesses adding new assets. Every year, we have to send out these things called forms of lists to businesses, and they return them and they say, yes, our personal property is the same, or we've gotten rid of this, or we added this. So we had a lot of new assets listed this year. So thank you, businesses, for being honest on your forms of list this year. We appreciate it. So our total new growth this year for value is $14,806,130. Last year, our new growth was only about $7.4 million, so we've doubled that, which I think is super awesome, and I'm super happy about that. And hopefully, we can continue in that direction. Next slide, please. And a sip of water, because I'm doing a lot of talking. Okay, so, counselors, in your, not in this packet that we have on the screen here, but in your actual packet that you got for this meeting, we gave you, I think, like 15 different scenarios of how we can shift the tax rate. Generally, what we do, we shift the burden more towards the commercial industrial to take the burden off the residential property owners. We cannot fit 15 different scenarios on this slide to make it readable, so we've just put some highlights on there. This is fiscal year 25 residential tax scenarios. So last year, our single-family residential value was $546,143,700. This year, that has increased to $596,534,900. So that's up about 9.2%. We have a few more parcels in the single-family category. That's due to mostly conversions. People converted like 2 families and 3 families to 1-family homes with permits, so that added to that. So what we do, we take that full residential value, we divide it by the parcel count, and we get the average single-family value. Last year, that was the average single-family value was $206,794.28. So this year, it's up to $225,447.81. With these scenarios, we've done a few different shifts. So last year, we had the 1.715 shift to the commercial, industrial, personal property. The highlights on this one, column 2, 1.75 shift. That is the maximum shift. So that would be putting the most burden we can on the commercial, industrial, personal property to take it away from the residential. We're trying to get away from that. The one in the middle is a 1.725 shift. That was kind of in the middle of all the 15 scenarios we gave all of you counselors, so we just kind of chose that as a middle point. Third column is our recommended shift of the 1.715, which is the same shift that we had last year. And the final column is a 1.68 CIP shift. So is that the lowest we can go? No, but that just, for simplicity purposes, we use that one. The lowest we can go is 1. 1 means a single tax rate. Single tax rate would be $20.53. If we did that, the average single-family residential tax bill would go up about $1,000 a year, which we don't want to do that right now. I mean, I know we're inching towards that, but we want to do it gradually. We don't want to do it today. So in our recommended shift of the 1.715, the tax rate would be $16.71 per thousand for the residential tax bill. That would be an estimated average tax increase of $222.78 a year. That comes out to $18.57 a month, 61 cents a day. In saying this, just while I'm on this slide and while it's in my head, this has nothing to do with the school vote. School is not part of this budget. You voted on the school in October. We did our budget in the spring. And we do that because we have a fiscal year which starts July 1st. So the budget needs to be done by then. So just wanted to clear that up in case anybody had any questions. Next slide, Stacy. You're doing a great job, by the way. These are our fiscal year 2025 tax year options. So based on the shifts we talked about in the previous slide, the 1.75, 1.725, our recommended shift, and the 1.68, these basically show how much each class will be, like what their percentage of responsibility will be for the tax burden. So just so you know, the class 1 residential, their value of our total values make up 79.3372%. But by shifting to the 1.715 CIP shift, they'd be responsible for 64.5633% of the tax burden. Open space, 0%, because we don't have the open space category once again. The commercial, their values make up 11.8677% of our total values, but by shifting to the 1.715, they'd be responsible for 20.3531% of the tax burden. Industrial property, same type of thing. They make up 2.2465% of our overall value, but by shifting, they'd be responsible for 3.8527% of the taxes. And personal property, they make up 6.5486% of our total value. And by the shifting to the 1.715, they'd be responsible for 11.2308% of the taxes. That's the third column, the 1.715. Like I said, we gave you some other scenarios up there. We could not do the entire 15 scenarios we gave the counselors because nobody would be able to read it. So that's why we did that. Stace, next one. Good girl. Tax rate comparison, fiscal year 2024 to 2025. Last year, residential tax rate was $17.14 per thousand. With our recommendation, this year it'll drop to $16.71 per thousand, which is a 43% or 43-cent decrease. Commercial, industrial, personal property, last year the tax rate was $36.34 per thousand, and this year it would drop to $35.22 per thousand, which is a reduction of $1.12. So as Mayor Maxey said at the beginning, our recommendation is to keep the CIP, I cannot talk tonight, shift the same at 1.715. Our residential factor will be 0.8138. That is factored on our options table, which is something we get through the Massachusetts Department of Revenue software. It generates it when we put in our tax levy, which is how much we need to tax and raise through taxation. Fiscal year 25 tax rates, once again, we're saying $16.71 per thousand for residential, $35.22 commercial, industrial, personal property. Next slide, Stacy. Tax rates. Fiscal year 2015 to 2025. They're all over the map. They were a little lower in 2015. They gradually increased all the way up to fiscal year 2019. That's because we didn't really have a lot of increase in assessed values. As I said earlier, our assessed values have been increasing steadily since fiscal year 2020. When we do that, the tax rate does drop, so it has been dropping since fiscal year 2020. Next slide here. Oh, common question. Some of these questions might look familiar because we answered them last year too, but we still get them all the time, so we figured we'd add them in again just as a little reminder. Question 1, I have not made any improvements to my property, so why did my assessed value increase? I'm going to read these verbatim and then I might throw a couple things in there if that's okay with everybody. Per the Assessment Administration Law Procedures and Valuation Handbook issued through the Division of Local Services through the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, assessors are required by Massachusetts law to assess all real and personal property at its fair cash value as of January 1st each year. Fair cash value means fair market value, which is the price a willing buyer and a willing seller would settle upon in an open market transaction. To determine fair market value, assessors must evaluate a number of factors that impact the amount a willing buyer and willing seller would agree to, including sales, location, supply, and demand. In common terms, our property sales data is the primary reason for the increase or decrease in assessed values. If properties are routinely selling over assessed values, this indicates that our assessed value should be increased to reflect the fair market value. It is also important to note that the Department of Revenue also analyzes our sales data to make sure that we are not over-assessing or under-assessing properties. So we are what we call a Chapter 653 community. So everybody says, whatever's there on January 1st is what you're going to be assessing this year. Because of Chapter 653, we can take new growth through June 30th. So if somebody, let's say, pulls a permit, they're gonna put an addition on their house, they pull it in February, the addition's done in May, I can take that as new growth for that fiscal year. We analyze our sales data, like I said at the beginning. I get deeds in every month. I have to see what's arm's length, what is not. When we really start getting into the nitty-gritty, like in the middle of the summer, about what our assessed values are gonna do, we have to run a whole bunch of reports. We have to make sure our median values in each of the categories is somewhere between 90 and 110% of arm's length sales. If it's too low or too high, we have to adjust some things. Usually has to do with outliers in the actual analysis. Usually if you change one or two, it fixes everything. But that's a basic rundown of what I need to do this for you. Next slide, Stacy. Oh, you're so good. Question 2, why aren't properties that are used as Airbnbs classified commercially and taxed at the commercial rate? All properties that are used for residential purposes, whether for short-term or long-term residential use, have to be classified as residential and taxed at the residential rate. The argument is often that the owners of Airbnbs are making a profit by renting their properties. However, in similar fashion, owners of residential apartment buildings can also make a profit by renting their properties. We cannot classify and tax an owner of a residential property used as an Airbnb differently than any other residential property owner. The Massachusetts Department of Revenue could change that in the future, and if they do, we will assess and tax differently. Up until that point, my hands are tied. I can't do anything. It's the way it is. Thanks, Dave. Oh, my favorite. I believe my property is overassessed. How do I remedy that? If you believe that your property is overassessed, you have the legal right to file for an abatement for the current fiscal year, not 10 years ago, with the assessor's office from January 1st through the end of business day on February 3rd. Abatement forms are generally available in the assessor's office starting the last week of December. You may pick up an abatement form at the assessor's office, or we can mail it or email it to you. Once you file for an abatement, the assessor will send you a letter acknowledging receipt of the application and will request an inspection of the inside and outside of your property at a mutually convenient date and time. Upon inspection, the assessor will present the abatement application and inspection details to the Board of Assessors for a vote. Usually the abatement period for quarterly communities, which is what we are, is January 1st to February 1st. You're in luck. February 1st is on a weekend this year, so we get to go to February 3rd, which is the following Monday. What else did I want to tell you about this? If you file for an abatement, I'm just going to reiterate, I need to come and inspect your home. There are some people that are very, very shocked when they bring an abatement form to my office, and I say, okay, when can I come look at it? They're like, what do you mean you need to come in my house? What are you looking at? I'm going to print out your field card from my database, and I'm going to compare the data on that card to what I see in your house. I'm going to make sure we have the number of rooms correct. Do you still have an asphalt roof, or do you have a slate roof? Do we have your heating system correct? I'm not in there going through your drawers. I don't care about your pot plants. Your house is your house. I'm a guest there. You have to tell people that. They get a little nervous sometimes about the pot plant thing. And honestly, I'm way more nervous to go to your house because I don't know what I'm walking into. Everybody I've met, for the most part, is extremely gracious. I don't want to overstay my welcome. I want to get in and out, just so you know. Oh, Stacy, you're so good. Question 4. Why doesn't MassMocha have to pay taxes? Per the Assessment Administration Law, Procedures and Valuation Handbook issued by the Division of Local Services through the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, properties that may qualify for exemption from local property taxes include public land and facilities, hospitals, schools, churches, and cultural institutions. Because the museum is considered a cultural institution, it is tax exempt. That being said, it is important to note that any property owner who claims that their property is a church or museum or school doesn't automatically qualify for tax exempt status. The individual or organization would have to provide documentation to support the claim of tax exempt status. The Board of Assessors would also have to review the documentation and inspect the property to approve such status. Please note that while MassMocha is tax exempt anytime it leases any of its spaces to non-exempt entities, such as retail stores, restaurants, and other businesses, those spaces within MoCA become taxable. Those tenants then begin paying real estate taxes on the spaces they lease. Those businesses are also subject to taxes on personal property associated with the businesses. In fiscal year 2024, we assessed $43,643.26 to tenants for real estate and personal property of Mass MoCA, just so you know. I also want to reiterate that if you file your business with the state and it says that you have nonprofit status does not equal tax exempt status. It's based on use, and we take each case individually, just so you know. Question 5, who has TIFs with the city? Greylock Works, they have a 10-year TIF. Last year is next year, fiscal year 26. And the Blackington Mill LLC, their TIF that we talked about last year starts in fiscal year 2027. Oh, another favorite. Question 6, do the Porches Hotel Downstreet and tourists pay taxes? This question recently came up. Yes, they do. In fiscal year 2024, Hotel Downstreet paid $149,350.13 in taxes. The Porches paid $158,915.81 in taxes. And tourists, which they have various LLCs that own the hotel and other properties, like around the Mass Ave area, they paid $299,236.83 in taxes, just so you all know. Question 7, types of properties. This is just informational. Yes, we have 2,646 single-family homes, 84 residential condos, 43, we put mobile homes, but those actually mobile home parks, because we don't assess individual mobile homes, and properties with multiple houses on one lot. We have a bunch of those for some reason. 609 two-family homes, 183 three-family homes, 176 four-family homes, 258 commercial properties, and 63 industrial properties. Discussions and questions.
Okay.
Whew.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open
Thank
it up
you.
to the council. Mayor, is there anything you want to add before we open it to the council?
We'll start with the council.
Okay, Councilor Blackmer.
I have several questions, so be patient. Some of these I know the answer to, but I'm
Gotcha.
asking so that people at home can understand if they
Gotcha.
don't.
Yes,
One, the tax bills have not gone out yet.
correct.
Okay, so,
Can I elaborate on that?
oh, sure.
So our preliminary tax bills went out.
Sorry.
Those are the payments that are due in August and November. We call them preliminary tax bills because they are based on last year's assessed values, last year's tax rate plus 2.5%. We have to do that per the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. The new tax bills, the actual for fiscal year 25, those will go out the last week of December. Those payments will be due in February and May.
So you answered the second half of the question. You've already mentioned it, but I will reiterate again. The school has nothing to do with this year's tax rate.
Correctamundo.
If someone buys a house in, say, the fourth quarter of the calendar year, October, November, December,
Yep.
possibly even into January, they close on that house.
Yep.
They've got an escrow, depending on how much they put down on their house. Their escrow is going to be determined based on their previous year's taxes, because banks aren't, I guess telepathic. They don't know what it's going to be. They have to go with what numbers they have.
Yes.
So your person's escrow is going to be based on, in this case, if you close in, say, January 2024, your escrow is probably based on your 2023 tax bill,
Most likely,
your
yes.
2023 assessment.
Yes. So like, with me, like, my mortgage is with Greylock Federal. I get a letter from them every April that says, as of June 1st, your mortgage payment's going to change by X amount of dollars because we're changing your escrow amount.
And escrow is the different, what happens is that's based on, it's an estimate, and then they get the actual tax bills, and they're like, oh, you haven't paid us enough, so we're gonna have to up your tax bill to make up for it.
Yes.
And so they do that.
Correct. And in some cases, there are some banks who, they escrow a little extra. We call it a cushion. So they
Yep.
actually escrow like 13 months instead of 12, just in case there's any issues.
Yeah, because they don't want to get stuck.
Correct.
Been there, done. Previous tax collector, previous banker. So the bills that are coming out, the other issue that people seem to sometimes not understand is your preliminary bill is based on last year's rate plus the 2.5%. And then the assessment comes up and the assessment's gone up or down, but in a lot of cases, they do go up.
Yeah.
Particularly based on the sales that we've been seeing in this area. I've never seen sales like this.
Correct.
But because there's only 2 fiscal quarters left of this fiscal year, if there were, say, a $400 increase, unfortunately, that $400 increase is going to be split between the 2 payments and not the 4 payments.
Correct.
And that's just the way it is, and there's not much we can do. It's based on mass law.
Yes, and it can be really confusing for people, because I've had people come into my office and say, I can't believe I'm paying $600 or more. And so I'll go into our system and I'll say, okay, this is what you paid for your annual tax last fiscal year, which runs July 1st to June 30th, and this is what you're paying this year. And usually, it's not like you're paying $600 more a quarter, but they don't realize that because of what you just said.
Right, because it's the way the lag and the way it does. And this is based on a budget, it's based on, the state says what you can do. It's not like we can assign these values. These values are based on actual sales.
Correct.
And the state says, the state has to approve, because I remember there were years where the state didn't approve it.
Yeah.
And they had to come in on like the 24th of December, and the council had to come in and vote because the state didn't accept our values.
Yes.
So it's not like we just make up these rates so we can raise your taxes, so we can budget the way we want. It's
Right.
it's
So
set
like-
by the tax, it's approved by the state.
Yeah, so the Massachusetts Department of Revenue is my overlord. So I have to submit every single sale, even if you're transferring the house to your kids. They see every sale. They also see all of our sales in our analysis, so we can decide what to do with assessed values. They often have a lot of questions. Sometimes they're ridiculous questions, but yes. I also have to submit to them my LA4, which shows every category, every value. They have to approve that. They have to approve all of my new growth, so they see every parcel that has new growth. It's not something I can make up. Sometimes they go into my sales and they'll say something like, oh, well, how come the assessed value on this one went down and this one went up? And I have to give them an explanation. So they know everything.
And then just to kind of, some banks / mortgage lenders have better customer service and take the time to actually explain your escrow.
Yeah.
So, and some don't. Some say, your taxes went up, so call your tax collector.
Yes.
So I just want to, I think those are all my points. But thank you, and again, thank you for everything you
Thank
do.
you.
I know this is not an easy job.
It is not, and I'm sorry my voice gets hoarse up here. I have to do a lot of talking.
Okay, Counselor Breen?
Yeah. Hi, Jess. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I have a quick question. Could you go back to the evaluation base summary page?
Sure, what was that, page
7.
7? Yeah.
I'm just trying to get familiar with all the numbers, and I was looking at the residential and the commercial and the industrial, and I see that residential is 867, and in the calculation, it's just the single-family houses.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
The other question I have is, like, I have a neighbor that's nonprofit. Is his evaluation in these numbers? Like, where, if you look at residential, would the valuation of his property be in that number?
No,
How
it
does that
should
work?
be, because we're looking at taxable value, so, no.
So is there another number that has the valuation for non-taxable?
Yeah, I can get that to you. Can I email that to you later? 'Cause
Sure.
It's probably buried in my file here, but,
Sure.
yeah.
What kind of number is it?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you, because there are so many numbers in front of me right now. I can tell you, though, the exemption total number of properties is 357. 212 of those are city-owned, just so you know.
So that's commercial and residential?
Yes.
Okay. The other question I have on that is most of the residential growth, the $50 million, mostly just the value of the houses going up?
For the most part, it depends. New growth I mean, our new growth number was like 5 million. So 5 million of that is from new growth, but everything else is just us having to raise
The 45
our.
million is from,
Yeah, so we had, in residential new growth, we had what, 5,618,200 in new growth for residential. So, you know, that is based on new growth. Anything else is based on just values going up because of our sales analysis.
the other question, like, up on Brooklyn, where that house burned down.
Yeah,
And it went through gyrations of different things. That's now off the residential base, right?
it is still on the residential base, but it's a piece of land. So we took the value of the building off of that
Okay.
because there is no more building.
Okay, so, down on Blackington, when they built the science building,
Yeah.
those houses came off the residential base that were demoed? And does the state show any number, or is that because they're exempt, they're in that other category?
They're in the other category.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Counselor Bona?
Yeah. First, I'm not seeing on the types of properties one thing, which I know last year, I think we were a little surprised to see how low the number is, and I don't know if it's changed, but I don't see second homeowners.
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that.
It wasn't in your Q&A. So last year, I remember it was pretty low. It was like within the teens, you know, and I think most of us feel we know more than a couple dozen second homeowners alone, so.
So it's an uphill battle with second homeowners. I identified 12 this year that I was going to build based on deeds. Usually when the deeds come in, it'll say, you know, whose residence and post office address is in the deed for the person buying it. If it's a residence or post office address out of North Adams, that tells me they're probably a second homeowner or an investor. I identified 12, but then 3 ended up moving here permanently, so that's down to 9. My friend Dr. K over on Main Street, great second homeowner, returned his form of list. I had one person, she's actually moving here permanently, so I said, you know, I'm not gonna bill you this year because you're moving here, just so you can file for an abatement. One house, they are second homeowners, but the thing is being totally renovated and it's totally gutted and there's no personal property in it, so they didn't respond, but I figured that out on my own. One responded saying she was gonna send back her form of list and she never did. And then I've gotten 5 no response. I sent all these people letters. I figured a lot of them wouldn't answer. The hard part with second homeowners are that they're probably here on the weekend or on holidays. Do I go to somebody's house on the weekend? I will. Do I like to? No, because I've gotten burned every time I have done that. One time, I accommodated somebody's schedule, went out to their house on a Saturday to go see what they were building. Even though they knew I was coming, they were not very nice to me when I was there. Another time, we had people, they bought some property sight unseen. I don't recommend doing that, just so you know. That they were renovating, they filed for an abatement. They were coming from Boston. I said I will go up there on a Saturday. These snow flurries turned into a snow squall. They had my phone number. I gave them my personal cell phone. I said, if you have issues with travel, please call me. I waited there for about 15 minutes. They never came. 45 minutes later, they called me and said, well, we're here, so come on down. And I'm like, well, this isn't really what I want to do right now in snowstorm, but that's what I did.
Do you believe, through the chair, please, a lot of these, what I feel are second homeowners, are being passed along as more like just apartment buildings? So even though they're living there might be an apartment, and they're not, again, the only benefit, in most cases, we're not making a whole lot more, because the difference that we can get from a second homeowner is that their property in the house, which is really just their furniture, I guess, gets taxed versus residents don't. So you get a little bit more taxes out of them. But then you gotta say, well, how much is your bedroom worth? How much is your, and it's not gonna be a ton, but that is one benefit that you do get from second homeowners if they do say they're a second homeowner.
I mean, it's really tough because, I think like we talked about last year, this is North Adams, it's not Nantucket. There's not a lot of antiques and really awesome furniture in some of these second homes. And I understand where people are coming from, they get frustrated because they say, I got an IKEA couch. Fine. Oh, you're perfectly fine. You just came out of nowhere. I bought my furniture secondhand, like from my cousin or something, how much can it be?
Jessica, I'm going to stop you for 1 minute. I'm going to have you use the handheld mic for the TV.
Is it on?
Get your diva on.
It should be on, yes.
You should be able to take it.
Yeah, just pull it out.
Okay.
Look at me go, can everybody hear? I won't sing, you don't want me to sing, trust me.
So, but the other thing that I see about second homeowners is if we had a real number, because, we see at times our population is decreasing, but I feel part of that is because we are increasing in second homeowners, but in reality, these numbers, what you're saying doesn't show that,
Right.
Okay.
Like I said, it's an uphill battle. It's keeping track of data. A lot of times, mail will get sent back. Maybe we've mailed something to somebody out of town and now they're living in town, and that's what it says on the mail. It's just keeping track of a lot of data. I'm working on it, though. I want you to know that.
Okay. I think Counselor Breen was tapping on Saludo when he mentioned the Houghton Street, but that building was torn down. But do we see a lot of properties, or I shouldn't say a lot, but some properties where they are depreciating, they're going down in cost because they're abandoned, they're dilapidating? I'm thinking like the ones that are on Church Street, the big brick ones. Clearly they got to be losing value as they're falling apart, and I don't even know if we're getting taxes on those at this point, but there are still a number of properties out there that are abandoned and just not being taken care of. So those values, I'm assuming, are probably dropping.
They are. A lot of it is just me. I like to take walks. I'll walk around town. I'll look at a property and say, oh, that doesn't look good. I better check on that when I get back to the office. I do keep a separate, I call it a depreciation sheet. It's not required by the Department of Revenue, but I do keep track on a separate sheet of things that depreciate in value. There are a lot of abandoned properties. The houses on Church Street in particular, since we're on this subject, I'm just going to touch on it. The city filed to foreclose on those with the land court back in September of 2021. We are still waiting a judgment from the land court. They're notoriously slow. We are not getting tax revenue from those properties because the owner died. The land court did send a letter to the owners, I think next of kin, who is also deceased now. So I think the land court is now looking for these other relatives somewhere. It's very, very frustrating because we have taken pictures of the properties to show what's going on, the porch falling off, people breaking in. We've sent them to our lawyer. He has filed them with the court. It is not making them move any faster, unfortunately.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But it also does that when it comes to your evaluation, if there happens to be a nice house right next door to a dilapidated house, isn't that affecting the value of that house also?
It affects the value of the neighborhood, I'll say. So we have neighborhood codes. If it's a larger street, sometimes the neighborhood codes can vary. If it's a smaller street, it might be one code for the entire street. I know there was one this year. The street is kind of split up a little bit. So one half of the street is in neighborhood 3, which is average. I did change the lower half of the street to a 4, which is, not that great. It's fair, just because the 3 houses on that part of the street are all falling apart, except for one. One is actually okay, but, those other properties were bringing that value down.
You said there was no growth in industrial, and this may have actually fell on past years, last year or the year before. When you look at our industrial park, so you had Dukes that came in, that probably was once considered industrial, that's now commercial.
Commercial.
Is that correct?
That's
Did that
correct.
happen this year or last year?
Last year.
Last year. And then what about like the growing facility? How's that being
That I still have,
evaluated?
I'm trying to remember my database, but I'm pretty sure we have that as industrial.
Okay, but are taxes being affected by that being opened or closed? Is that?
So The grow facility, the owner of the actual grow business isn't the owner of the building. That's owned by an LLC out of California. Last time I looked, taxes were being paid, real estate taxes anyway. As for the personal property for the grow facility, last time I looked, they were behind, but I did not look today, so I don't know if anything has changed there.
And I think the last one, if you add in your future list, because I know you wrote porches and tourist and those, and another one, I've seen people complain that they feel they get some big tax benefits is the Walmart building. Because
Oh, they're
I know,
they're
but
a
I'm
top
just saying,
commercial
I've
taxpayer.
seen where people post and they'll say that they have found loopholes where they don't, Walmart doesn't pay any taxes, so.
Well, Walmart is our top commercial taxpayer, just so you know. In fiscal year '24, they paid $363,134.72 in real estate taxes. That's not counting their personal property.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Counselor Shade?
Yes, through the chair. In the numbers that were presented, you showed us the average single-family home. Do you have those same numbers for the average multifamilies?
Not on me, but I can get those to you probably later tonight or tomorrow, if that's okay. I'd be happy to do that.
Yes, please.
I just do the single family for this presentation because it's just easier, because that's what we sell the most of and people buy the most of. It's the thing people are most concerned about.
Very true. I think when it comes to renters, though, a lot of the multifamilies end up being renters, and then rents get increased when these go up. So I think renters are going to
Got
want to
it.
know those increases as well for that assessment.
I'm going to write myself a reminder note on the back of my presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, another thing that I'm noticing here, the numbers show it. In 4 years, the average residential property is worth $260 million more in total over 4 years throughout the city. And when assessing fair market value, I know you said it's about sales. Does it take into account that a lot of sales have been done from the mass exodus of COVID from large cities, and that has kind of inflated the housing market to unfair levels? I think properties have sold at higher rates than they really are worth or would normally sell at. I think the rate of the selling of properties has been at values that are far more inconsistent with traditional housing values. Does that play any role in the factor of assessing the values of the homes, or is it specifically just based on those sales?
It's specifically based on the sales.
So there's no way to take into account the other conditions that are causing.
Correct. There's not. And, it's not easy to get up here and tell people in a community like ours, your taxes are going to go up again. I know how much your groceries cost. I know how much your gas bill is. Unfortunately, I cannot take those factors into account. I just have to look at the data and go with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My last question is, in looking, the one good thing we can say about this is the rate itself is continuing to be decreased. And that overall is a good thing. If the rate had stayed the same from where it was 5 or 6 years ago, these bills would be massively even more than they are right now.
Right.
So seeing the rates come down is a great thing. What can people do without damaging their properties to help lower their property values from increasing so much? Is there anything people can do to not have their property values go up so much?
It's a good question, but not really. When I do sales analysis and when I try to figure out where your assessments are going to go, that's my piece. I can't, take the budget into account or our tax levy. So, like I said, in the spring we do a budget. Last year our budget was $47.4 million. This year it is $48.8 million. The amount we had to levy, which is the amount we need to raise through taxation to support our budget. Last year that was $21.3 million. This year it's $22.4. So that's an increase of about $1.1 million in the tax levy. That's really what it comes down to. I wish there was a way for people to lower their value without ruining their property, but there's really no way, unfortunately.
And if people decided, okay, they have a garage, they wanted to tear it down, would that make their property go down? If they
It
had a
would,
shed
and
and
I'm glad you
wanted to
actually
get
brought
rid
that
of
up.
it, those kind of things?
I'm glad you brought that up, because it's extremely important. A lot of times, people will get rid of a pool, they'll get rid of a garage or something. They don't pull a permit for it, which I don't care, but I get copies of all the permits from the building department. So when those come through and I see something that's going to either increase value or decrease value, I make sure I go do an inspection on that property. So when people don't tell me, and if I don't know, those things stay on the card. And a lot of times, the only way we do find out is when we do our 10-year cyclical inspections, and we go out to a property and say, wow, you don't have an in-ground pool anymore. So always important for the taxpayer, let me know when you get rid of something. You're not gonna tell me when you add something, I know you're not, but that's okay.
Perfect, thank you. And then, finally, I noticed that about every 5 years, we have a recertification. Will that be
Yeah.
next year?
Yes, fiscal year '26.
And will that be a reevaluation and recertification, or just recertification?
It will be both. It is a recertification with the Department of Revenue, and we're in the middle of our cyclical valuation, which is like a 3-year process. We're in year 2 right now. Everything should be finalized by fiscal '26. It's gonna be a banner year.
That's all, thank you.
Counselor Fitch.
Yes, thank you. Love that you're keeping it so real and fun tonight. Thank you.
I'm glad you think it's fun.
You do, like you're making numbers fun, which is rare. I wanted to have a conversation about commercial versus residential, because you
Yeah.
were talking about how we don't want to necessarily shift the burden
Right.
more towards commercial. But am I correct in saying that we are amongst the 3-4 highest commercial tax rate in the state?
Yes,
think
so
so.
in fiscal '24, we had the 3rd highest commercial tax rate in the state. Holyoke and Pittsfield were ahead of us, but we were number 3. In terms of residential values, we were 27th out of 352, which is still kind of high, but.
Yeah, sure. So tricky on either side, because I imagine we want to attract and retain residents, and we want to attract and retain businesses. But I wanted to ask about this because just looking up our neighbors' tax rates for commercial, they're significantly lower. Adams a little less so, but Williamstown is seemingly about half of what ours is. And I'm just concerned that that in the long run might mean that we will lose more businesses to those locations. So I don't know what the solution is, other than trying to shift this over time. And you alluded to that fact, but I wanted to ask, like, do we have a plan to shift that over time?
I don't know if we have a plan in place. We've had discussions here in the past couple of years about wanting to shift, I don't want to say more towards a single rate, but we do. Last time we had a single tax rate was fiscal year 1980, which began on July 1st, 1979. I was 3 months old when that happened. It's been a long time. You know, because it's hard because we want to be fair to our residential taxpayers, but we also want to attract new businesses, and it really, you know, it's hard. We don't know, we have ideas of what to do, but there's no solution. There's no one solution. Yes, Counselor Shea.
Counselor Shade.
Yes, through the chair to the mayor, this might be more of a mayor question. Of those 212 properties owned by the city, how many of them are currently vacant and in the process of being sold?
So anything that we occupy as a public building, a public service building, whether it be us, the city yard, the police station, those we plan on keeping. Sullivan School is under negotiation. The Windsor Mill is always a big question mark, and we look to do some more environmental assessments. But most of our buildings that we own are occupied, with the exception of those that we own through land court proceedings, which eventually we hope to move. But really, the big arbitrage is Sullivan School, which we're working on.
Do you know how many of those properties are in land court now?
Land court, we have probably,
See, Bev and I talked about this earlier today. So we currently have 29 properties in land court, parcels, I should say. And I think we have another,
and can I just add, some of those parcels have been in land court since I was the tax collector.
it's true. And I think we have another 17 that we want to put in. We already wanted them in, but they're not in yet. And I already have a wish list for next year with 25 others on there, so it's a never-ending list. I'd really like some of the current things to come out of Land Court because I think they would be great to auction off. I would love to have an auction, but
Thank you.
And if I could speak to that just for a second. So what we are really trying to do as the Department of Revenue, the Department of Local Services increases what we call land of low value, which is up to about $26,000 of assessed value right about now. We're trying to shift a lot of those small lots into that category, so then we can certify them, do a butter sale, do an auction, and those kind of things. But it takes some time to get through that whole system. So we try to push as much as we can in a fiscal year, but there are filing fees, and we don't want to blow up our foreclosure budget every year. You're an advocate for adding to the building fund, the building repairs fund. I want to add to the foreclosure fund so we can get them in. And most of these houses that we would foreclose on are vacant or dilapidated. We work very hard, Bev Cooper, our tax collector, really works hard with people who are struggling to make their payments and do payment arrangements. The people that we go after are the people who have abandoned their property or the people who blatantly just don't pay.
Council Blackmer.
A couple things. One, I know it was brought up about surrounding communities and their commercial rate. A lot of communities don't have enough commercial business, so they don't have a split tax rate. Buckland, I used to work there. We didn't have a split tax rate. We didn't have, other than downtown Buckland. It sounds like an odd phrase. So same thing with Williamstown, doesn't have a lot of commercial business space. So that's part of the reason they keep it, because even switching it doesn't have a huge impact. So I just wanted to clarify that. One thing also, I know we talked about Walmart, and I know this has been a bone of contention since that. The state changed the law 10, 15 years ago, where, so originally, corporations like Walmart paid tax to the community on their inventory. The state then changed the law where they paid a state excise tax, is what they refer to it as, and they pay it to the state. And once they did that, part of that ruling is that they don't pay personal property tax on their inventory. They pay it on their equipment, they pay it on their racks, they pay it on their computers, loading equipment, all that stuff, but they don't pay it on their inventory. That was a big change a long time ago. We've complained to our legislature that if there was an excise tax, that the state got more money, then maybe they should be sending it more this way, but I think it's been so long that people kind of forgot about it. Thirdly, the TIF that you talked about, and talked about the businesses and when they stop. So originally, the building, Greylock Works, when that building was sold, the value was about $700,000, $750,000. The TIF didn't eliminate the taxes on that $700,000 value. What it does is it reduces the taxes on the improvement, the millions of dollars that they've made in improvement. And right now, since they're in there, last year, they're paying 90% of the tax, isn't it? Didn't we do like a 10% over? Or was it even heavier than that? It was front loaded. So they're paying, I would say, 80 to 90% of the value of their improvements now. That's so, and that's the same thing with TIFs. TIFs they don't pay any taxes. People hear that and they think, Tourist isn't paying taxes and Greylock Works isn't paying taxes. They're not paying 100% of the taxes on the improvements, generally in the millions of dollars that they have made to the properties. They've also, there's usually employment requirements or investment requirements when there's a TIF. So because this always comes up and people like to complain about it, I thought I would remind people what a TIF is and what it does. So thank you to Greylock Works for your millions of dollars of investment in our community.
Okay, any other counselors?
Can I just make one quick comment
Go ahead,
going
Mayor.
back? Counselor Fitch, you had a question about commercial residential. As part of our distressed communities technical assistance grant that we talked a lot about, the P word, which we're not going to use tonight as I wink at you, the planning position. that is also an avenue that we're looking at as to how do we attract people without taxing them out? And how do we still keep North Adams affordable with achieving all of the things we want to achieve? So that is part of our evaluation process in our technical assistance grant.
Thank you so much for chiming in about that. That's helpful.
Okay, Counselor Bona?
Yeah. Through the chair, Counselor Shade hit on it again. The 212 properties that the city owns, are a lot of those like lots?
Yes.
Okay, because are you counting, like, for example, a school as one?
So
Like, is Brayton School one?
Brighton School is one, Sullivan School is two.
City Hall is one?
City Hall is one.
Okay, so 212, it just seems like a huge number when you're thinking of our major bill, Windsor Mill, one?
Windsor Mill's a little funny, so.
7.
So we actually have, like, the city owns the Windsor Mill, but we actually have separate property cards for each space in there because we do rent that out. We don't rent out each space, but, so yeah, Windsor Mill is one, but at the same time, any of the units that we do not rent out count, each unit is counted as one.
Hey, just 212 just seems like, when you're thinking about
I'd be happy
all
to
our
get you a
biggest
list.
buildings, it's not like we have 212 buildings the size of City Hall. A lot of them are just little lots here and there.
Correct.
But what that does leaves about 150 other nonprofit buildings that we don't get taxed on. And this is an argument that I brought up in the past, that when our commercial rate gets high and becomes unattractive to businesses, it actually becomes attractive to nonprofits, because nonprofits don't have to pay the taxes. So, you take, for example, Price Chopper Building, which we do get some taxes for the restaurant, but Williamstown Theater Festival, that owns the majority of that building, we don't get taxes on.
Right.
So we lost a lot of taxes. Were there any, do you recall, this past year that we lost commercial to nonprofits?
There was actually a residential home, which was purchased by one of our local churches. I think they're gonna try to make it some sort of, I don't wanna say counseling center, I don't wanna
Yeah.
talk on their behalf. But it sounds like a nice plan, so that was actually, a residential building, and that is now tax exempt. There were a few parcels that, of land that the city sold a while back that are now on the tax rolls for this year, so those weren't taxable.
But right, so when some of these health agencies, the college, and they buy residential or commercial, they go off the tax roll.
Usually, yes.
Okay, any other counselors? Okay, I'm going to open it up to the public. And if anybody wishes to speak on this or ask any questions, please step up to the mic. We'll need your name and address for the record. Okay, we're not getting any response from the public at this time. I am going to close the public hearing. Okay, hearing of visitors on the agenda. This is an opportunity for the public to speak to the council for 2 minutes regarding items listed on the agenda. And as a reminder, you have 2 minutes, and I will tap the gavel when you have reached the end of your 2-minute period. Anybody for hearing of visitors? Okay, please step up to the mic, name and address for the record.
John Hinkle, 250 on West Shack Road. I'm the highway foreman and the stop steward for the city yard. I just want to thank the mayor for stepping up and finally giving us a step forward on negotiations here. We're the lowest paid DPW in the county, and we're on the bottom 10% in the whole state. So we used to have 40 and 30 guys just in highway, and now we're down to 11 guys in highway, and we still have 77 road miles that we have to take care of. In the water, they have all the same amount of, you hear about how bad our infrastructure is, well, they have to deal with all that. And all these other municipalities are way ahead of us. We get qualified truck drivers to come work for us. They get there and they say, I can't do this, it's not enough money, and they leave, go someplace else, or they'll go in for an interview, and when they discuss our salaries, they're like, nah, no thank you when they walk out. So I'd like to thank the mayor for taking a step forward and appreciate your guys' support to help us out where we have an uphill battle, as you know, with everything in this town that we're dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on hearing the visitors? Okay, moving forward. Old business, we have none. Under new business, without objection, I would like to move up paper 12,433-1 to the top of the new business. And that is in order to set the tax classification of local tax levy to be allocated to each class of real estate and personal property taxes for the year 2025. Do we have a motion?
Move to adopt.
Second?
A motion and a second to adopt. Any discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote.
Blackmer,
Yes.
Bona,
Yes.
Breen,
Yes.
Fitch,
Yes.
Morrow, Leskowitz.
Yes.
Shade,
Yes.
Wilkinson,
Yes.
Sapienza.
Yes. Motion passes. Okay, council paper number 12,387-3, a communication. Sorry, wrong page here. Okay. Communication number 73 from Mayor Maxey ordinance. Yeah, no, I'm right. Bear with me for a second. Okay, 12,387-3, communication number 73 from Mayor Maxey, presenting fiscal year 25 compensation Schedule B adjustments for Public Works and Police. File the communication and turn it over to the mayor.
Great, thank you. First of all, thank you for the tax rate. Thank you. Before you tonight are 3 revisions to the comp plan for the police, fire, and highway. As Mr. Hinkle said, you know, we still have a lot of work to do as far as salaries go in the highway department. We were fortunate that we were able to come to an agreement as we did, but they certainly need to be more competitive. Despite this, we are still having a problem filling positions, but this was a point that I think we were all a little tired at the end. And this was a point that they felt that was a step in the right direction. I will say that all of our units, but specifically the highway, still has a lot of work to do as far as their compensation plan. That, as well as our general government employees. With police and fire, specifically with police first, I'll talk about police. We did a comp study similar to what we did with the highway and the fire department. And it came back that we needed to be more competitive across the board, common theme, but that they wanted to change the steps. So those officers who stayed longer got more of a benefit. So that's what we focused on. With the fire department, the focus was in the leadership, in the lieutenant salary line, as well as being fair across the board. So I have to praise all of the units for having respectful, productive discussions at the table. But within the city of North Adams, we still are lagging, but we are lagging the most in the highway department. So this is a first step to getting out in front of that. Just a few weeks ago, I lost what I considered a very good employee in the water department, despite this increase, because he could go 2 miles down the road and make $5 more. With the size that we are, and the other issues we have, I couldn't even compete with that. But I lost a very good, young, scrappy, smart employee to my neighbor for $5 more an hour. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. So we have to think about that as we move forward. At the same time, we talk about our tax rates and keeping North Adams affordable. So there's a give and take, but I still need people to respond to the calls when there's a fire. I still need people to plow the roads. I still need people to process your tax payments. So it's a little bit of a juggling game, but we are making right steps in the right direction. So before you tonight is an amendment to the compensation plan for fiscal year 2025. The plan is, once it's approved, I will come back in and ask for a transfer out of stabilizations to make the budgets whole. If you remember, during budget prep, we did not increase any salary lines because we didn't know where we were going to end. So now we have a good handle on that, and once it's approved, we'll make that appropriation so we continue to spend according to the appropriation. On average, police and fire are about in the $160,000 range, give or take. Most of that is driven by the fact that there's more of them than there are in highway, which is nothing to be proud of, but also their educational incentive and their shift differential. Highways coming in at about $105,000, so we're looking for approximately a $400,000 transfer out of stabilization, which we currently have 3.3, but that will be before you once we approve everything. So we were really focused in police and fire on the salary configuration, as well as the educational incentives for the fire department, some clothing allowance adjustments across the board for all divisions, and just really some wording and some procedural kind of stuff. But the big item always comes down to salary. So that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you. All right, council paper number 12,387-3, an ordinance to amend the revised ordinances of the city of North Adams under Chapter 2, Section 28, with the fiscal year 2025 compensation plan Schedule B. Do we have a motion?
Move to pass to a second reading and publish as required by law.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to pass to a second reading and publish as required by law. Discussion, Counselor Shade.
Yes, through the chair to the mayor, on average, what is the increase for each? So the average hourly rate of a highway employee went up how much?
So the highway went up $2, $2, and $1. $2, and $2 this year, $2 next year, $1. For the police and fire, it was on average, police first was on average due to the steps, anywhere between a 4 to a 6. And on the police side, excluding the lieutenants, it was anywhere from a 3 to a 4 in year 1. Following years for police and fire are 3.5. And that is comparable to what we're seeing in our surrounding communities. And our goal is in recruitment, and I think we talked about this in budget prep, is we want to bring people in, we want to be attractive to bring them in, but we also want to retain them. And what we're finding specifically in police and fire is there's a lot of department jumping for that reason. So we really took a hard look at Berkshire County.
Thank you.
Counselor Breen?
Through the chair to the mayor, specifically to I'm looking at the fire department grid, and you talked about retention and teaching for 30 years and been in business for another 20. F1, is this something new where it's at 3 to 9 years? That gate is a 6-year gate?
So yes, it is a 6-year holding step there, yes. And that is not new. That's been their grid for a while.
What is the other surrounding areas? I know they're volunteer, but what does Pittsfield have after 3 years?
In the same bracket.
Yep, they're in the same brackets.
The same,
For
okay.
fire, yes.
That's it.
That's it. Okay, anybody else?
And I just, if I may, Counselor, because I predict sometimes your questions. Once you hit the 10-year bucket, where that changes is basically the longevity, which is built in. There's no big step raise there if you're here under the fire, if you're here 10 or 15 years. It's basically in the base plus your longevity. And we don't, per se, have longevity anymore, but that's where the difference comes from.
Well, that's what I was concerned. Up to 9 years, there's no longevity pay?
10, starts at 10.
Yeah, so, yes, I was just thinking an incentive to have someone stay here, just to give them more money.
Absolutely, and that's what we've done with our negotiations for police and fire, and highway has a long way to go.
Okay.
Hey, Counselor Leskowitz.
I'd like to thank all the bargaining units and the administration in putting these compensation packages together. I mean, between all three, these are the heartbeat of the city that makes this city tick. I just hope that in the future, on the highway department side, that in the next round of bargaining, that we could do a little better, just like the mayor had alluded on. I mean, we need retention. We don't want to lose guys. We'd like the pay to be commensurate with cost of living and inflation, which to me it still doesn't, but I would like to see more steps in the future. Thank you.
Hey, Counselor Shade.
Yes, first, I also want to thank our police, fire, highway department for all the work that you do in our city. Many people don't see what you do, but we feel it every day, and it's very important work. I just have a question through the chair to the mayor. You said for the highway department, the step was 221, so at the...
$2 this year, $2 next year, $1 in the third year.
So at the final end of that, in 3 years, W1, number 1 would be how much?
Bear with me, Counselor.
That's what I want to make sure. So right now it shows 1730.
Right, so we would add 2, so 1930, and 1 would be 2030.
Okay, so 3 years from now, a person starting would be at 2030, when at minimum, they should be over 20 now. So I thank them for their work, I thank them for negotiating, but as you said, there's more work to do, and clearly, we're not there yet, and clearly they deserve more. So know that, that we need to do better for you as well, and thank you for doing better for us. And I think the same can be said of Councilor Breen's comment about longevity. If we want to retain people, we can't just cap their salary and tell them, this is where you're at, and you're not going to get any more going forward. We need to figure out a way to continue to compensate our long, active employees to keep them here and keep them in our city. Because if they're here that long, they're usually doing a pretty good job. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to show my appreciation to all the public service people that are here tonight, the police department, the fire department, and our highway department. We take for granted the fact that we can turn on our faucets and get nice, clean, running water every day. And you guys go out in the middle of the night, below 0 temperatures, stand in the hole filled with the water to keep our services running, and that's greatly appreciated. And of course, the protection that our fire and police departments give us as well. So I just wanted to make that statement. Any other comments? Okay, this is a roll call vote.
Blackmer,
Yes?
Bona,
Yes.
Shade,
Yes.
Fitch,
Yes.
Alaskowitz.
Yes.
Shade,
Yes.
Wilkinson,
Yes.
Sapienza.
Yes.
FYI, it didn't need to be roll call until the final vote.
Okay, well,
Just
just covering ourselves, that's
Yeah.
all. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah.
But everybody knows where we stand.
Point of clarification, did you need to vote those orders separately?
No.
Okay.
I don't believe
It's,
so. It
it's
was
your
all
show,
set.
but I just want to be sure.
No, it was all on,
I would have done it separately, but the agenda was presented that way.
Okay. I'm happy with your vote.
okay. Now, this is a, I'm going to explain something real quick. On council papers number 12,435, 436, and 437 are 3 separate petitions from National Grid for locations of poles and work that they want to perform. During the course of the last few days, we found an error on council paper number 12,436. requesting installation of underground facilities on Riverside Street. There's two ways we can go about this. We can just treat this as a typographical error, or we can wait until National Grid. They have been contacted to send us an updated petition with the proper street names on there. So we can go either way. Does anybody have a preference?
Is it supposed to be River Street?
No, it's supposed to be Ashland Street. Yeah. Counselor Leskowitz?
I believe we should probably just go ahead with, all we're doing is setting a hearing.
Okay,
All the specifics could probably be changed during the hearing.
okay. Counselor Blackmer?
I would set the hearing, but I would also make sure that when we post the legal notice of the public hearing, that we have the correct addresses.
It will be corrected.
So
Yep.
I'm fine with putting them all, but not only that, we might as well put them all in one meeting, save Grid from having to come out.
Well, that's my intention, is not to have Grid come out multiple times.
Right.
Yep.
Just do it all at once, with
Okay.
the correct posting.
Okay, council paper number 12,435, a petition from National Grid requesting a public hearing for one jointly owned pole location on East Main Street. I will set the public hearing for the second meeting of November without objection. Any discussion? Okay. Council paper number 12,436, a petition from National Grid requesting a public hearing for installation of underground facilities on, it is stating Riverside Street, that should be Ashland Street, and the rest of the statement says, starting at the intersection of Ashland and Summers, continuing approximately 180 feet. Again, I will set the public hearing for the second meeting in November. Any discussion? Council paper number 12,437, a petition from National Grid requesting a public hearing for one JO, and I had this question, what does JO stand for? That stands for jointly owned, because these poles are owned by both National Grid and, I believe, Verizon owns the poles as well. Continue jointly owned pole location on Ashland Street. I will set the public hearing for the second meeting in November. Any discussion? Okay, moving on. We have no licenses, and this time I am going to open forum. This is an opportunity for the public to speak for the council for 2 minutes on issues of municipal significance. As a reminder, I will tap the gavel when you have reached your 2-minute limit to signal that your time has ended. And as a courtesy, I ask that all parties please refrain from any personal attacks. Please step up to the mic and state your name and address for the record.
Nancy Bullitt, Johnson Street, North Adams. Couple of things that I wanted to just touch on. I travel Union Street multiple times on a daily basis, and I've noticed that there's been some changes in the old mushroom factory, which I'm thankful for, because my intention is to bring this up tonight to be concerned for the safety of people walking yet again another year in the dark. And as we get to winter time with the snowbanks, it's very concerning to me to have pedestrians having to be walking on the street. I'm hoping that the progress that I've seen in the last couple of weeks continues, and that sidewalk can be opened again for those people that have been having to walk on the street for so long. The second item that's related, but not related, it's related to winter, which is not my favorite time of year anyway, is a program that Pittsfield has instituted in 2023. A friend of mine brought this to my attention. It's called the Snow Angel Program, and it's a volunteer system to help seniors that have to keep their sidewalks clear, but they're not able to physically do it, though they're required by ordinance to keep their sidewalks clear. So I'm asking the council if there's any way that there could be some investigation into potential to help our seniors and those with disabilities to keep our sidewalks clear. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Anybody else for open forum? Hearing none. And now I turn it over to Mayor Maxey for mayor's updates.
Great. Thank you, Nancy, for those comments. I did get your email about the winter program. Just a real quick update on Union Street. The owner did finally pull a demo permit at the beginning of October, and did get the appropriate sign-offs. So we're hoping that we're going to see that specifically across from the Eclipse Mill come down, and then we can open the sidewalk. We have a couple calls into him about when the demo is actually started, because when he came in and got the permit, we were very excited, and we haven't seen anything. So more to follow on that. But he does have an elaborate proposal with drawings as to what he wants to do there. But again, what is the reality of that? So at a start, I just want to see the wall come down too. So thank you for that. Additionally, I was remiss and forgot to add a proclamation for transgender awareness, naming November 20th as a day of remembrance. I will read quickly this proclamation. Whereas Transgender Day of Remembrance, observed annually on November 20th, is a solemn occasion dedicated to remembering and honoring the lives of transgender and gender-diverse individuals who have tragically lost their lives due to anti-gender violence and discrimination. Whereas transgender individuals continue to face disproportionately high rates of violence, discrimination, and marginalization in housing, healthcare, employment, and public life, often impacting their mental and physical well-being. And whereas the City of North Adams recognizes the importance of creating a safe, inclusive, and supportive community for all people, regardless of your general identity or expression, and is committed to standing with our transgender community members, uplifting their voices, and ensuring their rights, dignity, and humanity are honored. Now therefore I, Jennifer A. Maxey, Mayor of the City of North Adams, do hereby proclaim November 20th as Transgender Day of Remembrance. Thank you. In addition, reminder, tree lighting is on Thursday, November 27th at 5:30. Please join us to gather at the monument.
No, it's not.
November 27th.
That's not Thursday.
Wednesday. Hey, you want to come to my house for Thanksgiving? Sorry.
We'll have a party.
Wednesday. Do I have the right day? Wednesday, November 27th at 5:30.
Yes.
Let's say that again. Wednesday,
Hey, November.
27th at 5:30.
Everybody.
Gather at the monument. We'll sing all our holiday songs together. Thank you for that. Positive news, we received a one-stop grant from Mass Development in the amount of $888,000 to help us support in our ADA work, our disabilities work, for sidewalk replacement and repair. This area will include Hoosick, Blackington, Elmwood, Montana, and Porter, which will be a spin-off of our corridor improvements that will be kicking off soon on Ashland Street. So that was exciting news. We also, for reconnecting communities, are having a walk and talk on Wednesday, November 13th, starting out at the Uno Community Center from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Thursday, November 14th, from 7:30 to 9 a.m. And on Friday, November 15th, from 7:30 to 9. So I hope people can join us for that. And real quick, you've noticed in addition to council chambers, we have a beautiful desk where Mrs. Sisto is sitting at. A little history, that is a former desk of the city council. It's my understanding that each counselor used to have a desk in this room with a key, and that desk has been passed around the city to various employees, starting with the city clerk's office. And someone approached me and asked me if we wanted it, and I of course said yes, because I hate looking at that old computer table. And I think it's a beautiful addition to the chamber, as well as a preservation of our history. So there's a little key in it, and every counselor had a key and could open the desk and keep their belongings in there. So a little bit of history added to tonight's meeting. With that, I'm all set. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Okay. Moving on, committee reports and minutes. Okay, hearing none. Liaison updates and counselor concerns. Counselor Shade.
Yes, I just want to inform everybody that on November 20th, North Adams Pride will be hosting a Trans Day of Remembrance Vigil. The location is to be determined, but you can watch on social media for an update or contact anyone at North Adams Pride or me, and as soon as that's finalized, we'll get that out to you, but it is going to be on the 20th. Berkshire Stonewall Community Coalition will also be hosting a vigil in Pittsfield on 11/17. I believe that's going to be at 3 p.m. at Wander in Pittsfield. Thank you.
Okay. Counselor Fitch?
Yes, I wanted to comment on the Route 2 overpass community site walks, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I see these as opportunities to chime in the process. What I had read and what went out indicated that decisions have not been made about what's happening to that overpass yet, and that the entities involved in helping to plan for that really want public comment and public input so that they make decisions that are based on the community's needs and wishes and desires. So hopefully everybody can attend those. And then one more thing. I spoke with Councilor Sapienza a couple months ago, and it took me ages to get this together, but I wanted to just do a little thing in each meeting, this day in North Adams history. So I pulled an old North Adams transcript article. So on November 12th in 1895, on page 1, the New York Central and Hudson River Railroad posted an advertisement claiming that it was the quickest, most direct line from North Adams, Pittsfield, Chatham, and the Berkshire Hills to New York, maintaining a through service of fast express trains, comfortable coaches, and Wagner Palace cars. Fun fact of the day.
Thank you. Okay. Counselor Blackmer.
I know we've talked about the repairs and the work that's been done. As someone who drives up, although I don't live up there, I drive up Eagle Street quite a bit throughout my workday, and it's nice to have the road done, so thank you. I know it was hectic and people weren't happy with the inconvenience, but it's nice that there's a result.
We had everything done up this year.
Yeah, well,
And more to come.
Is that all?
that's it.
All set. Okay, thank you. Okay, I have a couple of things. Responding to the comment regarding the Snow Angels, we don't have an official program, but I advocate that anybody that has elderly neighbors and neighbors that may be unable to remove the snow, just be neighborly and offer to assist them and do whatever you can. Just be a good neighbor, and that goes a long way without an official program. Also, there's been a continuing red flag condition, which means that there's a high danger of wildfires. We have, I think, 3 or 4 wildfires burning across the state, a couple across the border in New York, and some down in New Jersey. The weather's been very dry, the humidity has been very low, and the wind conditions will take a small, seemingly insignificant burn, and will spread it quickly. I'm sure Chief LaFave can attest to that.
North Adams currently is under a fire ban. There's no outdoor burning or outdoor cooking allowed.
Thank you. So I just wanted to remind everybody.
May want to repeat that, so he doesn't have a mic.
Oh, okay. Could you just step up to the mic, Chief, and just repeat that, please?
So if anybody didn't see on our social media, effective October 28th, I've placed the city of North Adams under a burn ban. So no outdoor burning of any kind, no outdoor charcoal fires for cooking. Propane is still fine, I want to clarify that. But we are under a ban until at least the 15th. We'll reassess that at that point. Thanks.
Thank you.
While he's there, I just have a question, though, about,
Go ahead.
through the chair. There are currently a number of
Well, I don't have the
forest
exact
fires in the
numbers,
state,
correct.
aren't there?
Yeah, they're, in November alone, there's, I think, 250 active forest fires right now, ranging from 1 acre to 270
In Massachusetts.
in Massachusetts alone. Yes.
Yeah,
And there's a good one, I thought, recently, like just in Chicopee, right? And
Yes.
they had to
Yep.
close the highway.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief. And another concern is, we have folks here from the Highway Department and the mayor. What is our condition with our water levels in the reservoirs? Is that a concern at this moment?
Not at this moment.
Not at this moment, okay. Anybody else? I do have one item of correspondence. You did that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, could I say one more thing? too?
Yes, go ahead, Councilor Fitch.
It's not been acknowledged, but we just went through a really large and tumultuous election. So like, just kudos to all the people in the city who were involved in pulling that off, including like the city clerk's office, the police department, like a lot of energy went into that. And then just a quick note about the outcome of that. You know, the outcome of that, of course, is exciting to a lot of people and is terrifying to a lot of people. And I wanted to say that I really hope that we as North Adams can be, well, continue to be a really supportive community, you know, taking care of each other, not being hateful, and being welcoming of new people and new ideas, and just keeping the good thing that we have going. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, correspondence. And one last thing, I want to commend the city clerk's office for handling the presidential election and being on the heels 2 weeks later from, or just a few weeks later from the school election. You've had a busy schedule, and you all have done a great job. Appreciate it. And keep up the good work. Thank you. And this is also from the Office of the City Clerk under correspondence. We have a notice of public audit, the election results from Ward 5. This is dated November 14th, 2024, 10 a.m., City Hall here in North Adams. Post-election audits background. In 2014, Chapter 109 of Chapter 54 of the General Laws was enacted, which requires post-election audits after presidential elections. Under the provisions of Chapter 54, Section 109A, Paragraph C, 3% of all the precincts in Massachusetts must be hand-counted as part of the audit process. The law requires that precincts to be audited must be chosen in a random, publicly verifiable, non-computerized drawing supervised by the secretary within 48 hours after the polls are closed. The law further provides for a hand count of only certain specified races where more than one candidate is printed on the ballot, and a statewide ballot question which is also randomly selected. The administration of the audit is conducted by the registrars of voters. The audit itself is very similar to conducting a recount where ballots are counted by hand in teams. The areas included in this audit will be president, vice president, senator in Congress, representative in Congress, senator in general court, and question 2. So basically, we are one of the 3% of all precincts in the city that are required to be counted, and that will be Ward 5 is going to be recounted. And any other correspondence? At this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
A motion to adjourn in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I adjourn.